What's up guys, my name is Ace, and yesterday we got a brand new aftermarket part, this time for the MX Guardian shotgun, and this is the JAK Lance Kit. So in today's video, we're going to be diving deep and breaking down exactly how this works, since the description is very misleading and confusing. With this kit, they do mention that pressure will build while the weapon is idle until maximum output is reached, and at critical pressure, velocity and precision are vastly improved. So from the sounds of it, this is the type of gun that should be charging up over time in order to gain extra velocity and precision, but that's just not how this works at all. Instead, this is just a semi-auto with a large pre-fire delay and very slow velocity, so you're dealing with a lot of drop with the small bolts that you fire out of the gun. And with that in mind, let's get into our damage profile, and based on what I was able to test here, it appears from 0 to 25 meters, it's going to be a one-hit kill anywhere in the body in core game modes, so we're dealing at least 150 damage anywhere in the body. Whereas beyond 25 meters, this is where you now will get a two-shot kill if you hit them in the legs, because in the legs, you're now just dealing 130 damage. As for our rate of fire, the first thing to point out here is the huge pre-fire delay that we have with this. So when you pull the trigger, it actually takes 125 milliseconds before the gun will fire. And that is a very long pre-fire delay. That means you have to be tracking your targets very well, and against moving targets, that can often be very difficult. Now, the nice thing is we have a little meter, so you can actually track that pre-fire delay a little bit. It's that little pressure gauge that's on the side of the gun. But in either case, the next thing to look at here is our rate of fire, which is effectively 212 rounds per minute. Now, that is including the pre-fire delays in between shots as well. But that means this is actually reasonably spammable for a gun that's capable of a one-shot kill at any range. And what this means is, while we do have a one-shot kill potential, if it does take us 2 shots to kill, like we miss our first shot or we're at a distance and our first shot hits the leg, well, if you're spamming at maximum fire rate, it's going to take us 283 milliseconds to kill with that second shot. And that's not a completely horrible time to kill potential, so even if you miss the first one, you'll often still have a chance to get that second shot off. As for our ranges, I did already kind of cover this, but just for a different view here, you can see at 25 meters, that's where we're capable of getting a one-hit kill anywhere in the body, whereas beyond that, the legs will be a 2-hit kill. And it's also worth noting, our bolt velocity with this is 110 meters per second, and I did double check, that is an accurate value, and that means you're going to have to account for a whole lot of drop if you're extending out your ranges, and you're really going to have to lead moving targets, especially if they're moving perpendicular to you at a bit of a distance. You're going to have to aim pretty far ahead of them to land a shot. As for hipfire, this is actually massively improved over the base shotgun. Our minimum hipfire spread is 2.6 degrees, and our maximum when moving is only 2.9 degrees. That's very, very small for a maximum hipfire spread. So in close quarter situations, it's often in your best interest to just hipfire with this. As for recoil, even though we can only spam 3 shots, if you do spam those 3 shots out, you will actually see a bit of random recoil here. It's just going to bounce kind of all over the place with those 3 shots, so it is often in your best interest to take some time to let that recenter unless you're in really close quarter situations. And this is also just a good illustration of how much the bolt will tend to drop with those 2 bottom hits that you can see. That upper hit is after recoil has been applied. Next up, let's have a look at our handling stats, and our aim down sight speed is just 220 milliseconds. That's excellent. Our sprint to fire time is also really good at just 138 milliseconds, and our reload add time thankfully isn't too bad. It's 1.57 seconds, although with this, since we only have 3 shots per magazine and we can't increase that at all, I would actually recommend combining this with the mag holster perk, because that will cut our reload add time down to just 1.1 seconds. But then finally, for the base stats of this gun, let's have a look at our movement speeds, and our base movement speed isn't too good. It's just 3.7 meters per second. However, our sprint speed is pretty solid at 5.7 meters per second, and our aim walking speed is also pretty impressive at 3.4 meters per second. So as long as you're not just walking around with this, it's actually pretty good. And with that, while that covers it for the important base stats of this gun, there's just a couple other things I wanted to mention with some interesting attachment interactions here. The first thing I want to point out is with many of the vertical underbarrel grips, it will state that our rechamber time is improved by 51%. So by looking at that, you would think that this gun would be able to fire very noticeably faster while using these grips, and unfortunately, that's not the case at all. These actually don't affect our rate of fire at all, so I don't know what's going on with that value there, but you can pretty much just ignore that. And then another key thing to point out here is optic attachments are terrible on this gun because they massively harm your aim down sight speed. Even with the really small low zoom optics like the Mark III reflector, for instance, that's going to harm your aim down sight speed by 61%. So I would just recommend staying far away from using any optics with this. And there we go. Let's just get into my preferred attachment combination with this. I'm just going to share one since there's not a whole lot you can do with this. Most of the attachment slots are blocked off. And again, I would stay away from the optic attachment. So with this build, I'm using the Vulture Claw Breacher, which is one of the ones that helps with our melee damage. So this will be a one-hit kill with melee, and sometimes you're going to need that if you burn through those 3 shots really quickly. Then we've got the SL Skeletal Vertical Underbarrel to help a bit with recoil, as well as our handling stats. We've got the 1mW Quickfire Laser, and then finally the MX DCP-0 stock. And with that, we do end up with pretty solid handling stats. Honestly, it's not that much different. The attachments don't have a massive effect on this gun. And when it comes to my overall thoughts on this gun, it's very interesting, it's very unique. I would say there's nothing in the game that's quite like this, but it's also very difficult to compete with if you're in a good lobby. This is the type of gun where it would be fun in the right type of lobby where there are people using variety and there's time to react and not having people moving so quickly that there's no chance that you're going to be hitting them because of that pre-fired delay combined with a really slow bullet velocity. And with the way matchmaking tends to work, if you're a good player, it's going to be fairly rare that you're going to run into those lobbies. And then as a result, it kind of makes this just a terrible gun that's not very fun to use at all. So it's just really dependent on what your enemies are doing. But if you can get into one of those more chill mixed lobbies, I have found that this can be plenty of fun to use. Now, of course, those are just my thoughts, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this kit in those comments down below. And if you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.